So welcome. Thank you ever so much for joining what for me is my evening. Recognise that might not be the case for yourselves. And I will ask everybody to introduce themselves in the chat in just a moment. Hopefully you can see my slides. If somebody's able to do a thumbs up to say that you can see my slides, that would be great. Just so that I know everyone's seeing what I can see. Yes, fantastic. Thank you. There's a question there. If you'd like to unmute yourself, I think there's somebody with a question. Okay. Well, any questions, do just put it in the chat or unmute and feel free to ask. My apologies. I was actually due to be here with my colleague this evening who was going to be doing this presentation, and unfortunately he's had a family emergency last minute, so I'm afraid you've got me instead, but it does mean that I'm going to be needing to sort out the chat and speak to yourselves as well at the same time, so my apologies. But we will get started if that's okay. And what I'm going to be talking about this evening is practical tools for exploring individual and collective strengths. Now, this is, I'm an occupational psychologist by background, working in organisations to help people be at their best more of the time. And I use a lot of positive psychology in the interventions that I am developing and using. And I'm going to be talking about some of those practical tools this evening. So a big crossover with solution-focused approaches. Now, it would be really helpful from my point of view just to get a little bit more insight into you and who we've got in the room. So hopefully, apologies, my slides aren't, there you go. So if you'd like to, if you're able just to introduce yourself in the chat, who you are, where you are in the world, because I know we have people all over the place, and a strength that people might appreciate in you. So if you're able to just to reflect on that for a moment and give your thoughts on that in the chat, that would be great. Any thoughts? It's not necessarily the easiest thing to do, is it? To identify your strengths as one of the things we're going to be talking about this evening. Enthusiasm, thank you, Matt. Energy, fantastic. And we've got people all over the place: Canada, Sweden, UK, Australia, I think so, San Diego, Ontario. Fantastic. Positivity, giving second chances, fantastic. Loving, seeing the positive in spite of the negative. So a broad range of strengths that you're recognizing in yourselves, which is fantastic. Moving from chaos to clarity, I like that. Integrity. And a number of strengths that I can see are likely to be fitting with some of the roles that some of you are telling me you have as well. So strengths are multifaceted, aren't there? There's lots of different strengths, but one of the challenges sometimes is people being able to identify their own strengths and use them effectively. And that's basically a lot of what I do in my work. So Martin and myself set up Work Positive a very long time ago now, about 20 years ago now, as a way of providing organisations with a practical mix of occupational psychology and positive psychology. So we go into organisations and work with people, it might be individuals, might be teams, might be whole organisations, helping the people in the organisation to be the best they can possibly be. And we do that in a variety of ways. But a good few years ago now, what we found was that there weren't the tools out there that we wanted to be using in the work that we were doing, the consultancy work we were doing. And that was the start of At My Best. And so At My Best is our product range, and those products are all practical tools to help people to be at their best more of the time. And one of those tools is a set of strengths cards, which are really useful for us in terms of the way we tend to talk about strengths and work with organisations around strengths. And that's what we'll be talking about today, is our approach to strengths. We also, we're quite we have quite a lot of ideas. We're quite good at the creative side of things. So Woohooyoo is another, it's actually a more of a gift than a product to be used in organizations, although we do sometimes see it being used there. And it's a tool whereby you can collect the stories of what people value in an individual and present it to them as a gift, as a book. So the stories of people at their best. And Deckhive is a online facility to be able to use card decks online. We're going to be using that today. So we do a range of different things, but the important bit for today is that we are psychologists working in organizations, helping people to be at their best more of the time. And as I said, working with strengths is a big part of what we do. And obviously not with every client, but often it's one of the places we start. It's a really simple way of helping people to recognize the opportunity to build on what's working and build on those stories of success. And we'll often start at the individual level, working with people to identify their own strengths or to give feedback to each other around strengths. But then we'll often move on to look at what the strengths are of the team or the department or the whole organisation. So one of the brilliant things about a strengths-based approach is that you can apply it at both the individual and the collective level. It's one of the things I love about strengths-based approaches. And one of the other things I love about strengths-based approaches is it's a very easy way to have a big impact. There's quite a lot of research out there around the value of strengths-based approaches, and this may be stuff that you're already familiar with. But people who are most aware of their strengths are 10 times more likely to be flourishing, and people who use their strengths most are 15 times more likely to be flourishing. And I think this is really interesting data. This was taken from the work of Lucy Hone 10 years ago now. I can't quite believe that, but she and her colleagues did a huge piece of research, cross-referencing the extent to which people were flourishing with a whole range of different criteria. And one of the things they looked at was the extent to which people understood what their strengths were and how often they were using their strengths. Now, I find it fascinating that just knowing what your strengths are increases the likelihood of you flourishing by that much, 10 times. But I'm also fascinated by the fact that using your strengths makes such a big difference on top of that. And one of the things that we often see in our work is a lot of effort is put into helping people to know what their strengths are, but that's where the work stops. And less effort is put into helping people to better understand how they could be using their strengths more of the time. But that is something that can make a really, really big difference to people. And so our approach to working with strengths is very much, it's very organic. It's very much about helping people to better understand where they're using their strengths in their own language, in their own context, so they can increases the likelihood of them being able to find ways to use their strengths even more. And also, to be honest, to notice where they're already using them. One of the things we often notice is that people are using their strengths, but they're simply not aware of it, or they're not noticing it very frequently. And just helping people to increase their awareness of their strengths use makes a big difference. So strengths-based approaches are most definitely worthwhile, helping people to better understand their strengths and make sure they're using them more. But there are lots of other positive associations with strengths usage. People who use their strengths more are much more likely to be engaged at work, have higher self-esteem and confidence, have higher levels of energy, experience less stress, more resilient, and show increased performance. So strengths use is associated both with improved performance and improved well-being. And there's sort of not a lot that you can't like about this. And from our point of view, we'd argue that it's pretty simple to edge people up in terms of their understanding, awareness of, and usage of their strengths. Now, some of you might be familiar with some popular questionnaires that help people to identify what their strengths are. So VEER, which is it's a tool that you can access for free. So if you haven't looked at any of the strengths questionnaires and you're interested, that's a really interesting one and easy one to access. The Values in Action questionnaire. Just Google it and you will find it. Strengths Finder, which is also US based, the VEER and Strengths Finder are both US. And then StrengthScope and Strengths Profile are both UK tools. Now, what these tools do is they take you through a process of you answer a load of questions, and then it generates a report telling you what your strengths are. And these can be really valuable tools when people need some form of formal assessment. But in my world and the work that I'm typically doing, what I'm doing is I'm working with people around development, maybe personal development, team development, organizational development, culture change, that kind of thing. So what I'm really interested in is not so much that ability to compare between people, but the opportunity for people to properly connect with their strengths. And that's something that is quite different with our approach to the questionnaire approach, where essentially what happens is you fill in a questionnaire online, the computer does its magic, and it throws back a report telling you who you are at your best. And so there's a little bit of disconnect between the process you go through to identify your strengths and you. And we want to narrow that gap as much as possible. What I really want to do is help you to properly recognize that it's you that's in the driving seat here. It's you that's identifying your strengths. It's you that's owning the strengths profile that you come up with and the opportunity to grow and develop your strengths. And so we take a little bit of a different approach, which I'd like to show you a bit more about this evening. So, who would like to have a bit of a play? Now, unfortunately, I can't get decks of cards to you all, which is the way that we would often be doing this. If we were in person, then we'd be using our strengths cards and getting you to sort through them. That's obviously a little bit difficult in the current context. But we have another way in which we can do that. So that we're going to do that, we're going to use some cards online. And this sits at the heart of our approach to helping people to identify their strengths. We use this simple deck of cards, single word on one side, image on the other, and take people through various processes to help them to identify their strengths. Now, this is obviously different to using a questionnaire, but it does still provide people with some kind of prompt. I don't know how many of you found it difficult earlier to come up with your strengths, or how difficult you find it is for your clients to come up with strengths. But what we quite often find is that it is hard for people, if out of the blue they're asked the question, what are your strengths, for them to be able to articulate that, unless it's something they've been doing quite frequently. And we find that using a deck of cards makes it a much easier process. It's just providing those prompts, it's providing the language and just the start point for the conversation. And to be honest, it's providing permission. Permission to say, yeah, I want you to go through, I want you to pick some of these words, I want you to identify some of these as your strengths, which is quite different to being asked an open-ended question and not being quite sure what's being expected of you. And so we find using a deck of cards certainly helps to make the process easier. But as I said, that's a little bit hard for us to be doing with physical decks of cards today. So we're going to be using Deckhive, which is, I mentioned earlier on, which is our online tool for using card decks in online contexts. And I will share the link to that for you in just a moment. But just before I do that, and we get onto that, what we're going to do in a minute is I'm going to take you through a process. I'm going to put you into small groups where you can start to identify what your strengths are and start to see the kind of process that we will often use. And hopefully you'll recognise a lot of overlap with maybe some of the solution-focused approaches that you would typically use in your coaching and your facilitation. But first of all, just to clarify for you what I mean by strengths. So strengths for me are the inner qualities that shape who you are at your best. The inner qualities that shape who you are at your best. So it's not knowledge, it's not skills, it's not experience. All of those things are important, but that's not what I'm talking about when I talk about strengths. I'm talking about those things that are likely to go horizontally across your life. So maybe from work to home to school, and vertically across your life from childhood to adulthood and so on. So your strengths are often those things that you can't help but do. And when you're playing to your strengths, typically you see enhanced performance, you're energized by using your strengths, and you feel like you're being you're at your most authentic. So the example I often use about myself is that if you went and spoke to my parents about when I was a young child, age 9, 10, then they would tell you that my books were lined up in alphabetical order on my bookshelves. And if you speak to my husband now, he will tell you that before I go to the supermarket, I write the shopping list in the order of the shop. So fruit and veg first, and so on and so on, depending on which supermarket I'm going to. So I'll actually rewrite the list if I'm going to a different supermarket. Now, for me, that perhaps suggests some sort of strength around order and organization. If you look from childhood to adulthood, there's that consistency around how I behave in different contexts. For other people, taking the supermarket example, they'll say, well, why would you even go with a list? The whole point is to be spontaneous, is to be creative and choose what's there on the day. An indication of maybe some different strengths. Now, the challenges with strengths is often, as I've just given with that example, I can't help but do that. That's my natural way of doing things. It doesn't occur to me to do anything different. It wouldn't occur to me to go to the supermarket without a shopping list. And so because our strengths are often those things that we do intuitively, and we've always done, they can be quite hard to notice for ourselves. So it can be really useful to go through a process of starting to think about deliberately when we're at our best and what the strengths are that we might be using in those situations. And also starting to tease out the difference between those things that we love to do and we're great at and that energize us, which I would define as strengths, and those things that we've learned to do. So learned behaviors are those things that we can do well, and we should absolutely celebrate and value those things, but they don't energize us. They're the things that we've had to learn to do for whatever reason, and they're not necessarily things that feel particularly true to who we are. They're not the things that we feel most comfortable at doing, but we've learned to be good at them. Those are great things to have, but they are different to our strengths. And learning to tease out the difference between those two things can be really helpful as a way of finding out how you can really maximize your contribution to your workplace, to the world. Because we would argue that's very much about focusing on strengths and doing the stuff that only you can do and moving as far as possible in that direction. Recognizing that, of course, it's never the case that we can all be using our strengths all of the time, but any slight shift we can make in that direction is likely to make a difference to both our performance and our well-being. So that's what I would define strengths as, the inner qualities that shape who you are at your best. So that's an important thing to note as we go into the next bit. What I need to do now is I'm going to share a link with you so that you can access Deckhive. Now you'll see that in a moment on my screen, but then I'm going to hide it so I don't cause confusion. Right, now I'm just going to go into the chat. Sorry, I can't talk and do it at the same time. So I've just put a link to Deckhive in the chat, and what I would like you to do is just click on that link, and then what will happen, you can still see my screen at the moment here with Deckhive on it. You'll see that you're actually going to come into a screen that looks like this. You're going to join this screen. I can see one of you is already here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I don't just cause confusion. Well, stop sharing this screen. I'm going to go back to my slides. But hopefully you can all find your way into there. And just while you're doing that, I'm then going to explain how this is going to work. So in a moment, I'm going to put you into breakout groups, and I'm going to put you into groups of 3. I think we can do that at the moment. I think we've got 21 people on the call, hopefully other than me. And so I'm going to put you into groups of 3 or 4. And what I want you to do is when you see your breakout group, just note that number, because then you will see on the bottom of the Deckhive screen, you've got tabs, and I want you to go to the tab that matches your breakout room. So if when you're put into a breakout room, you're in breakout room 2, then what I want you to do is go to tab 2, and that's where you're going to be working. And then I want you to pick a photo that reminds you of a time when you've been at your best. And I'll show you in a moment how to do this on Deckhive just to make sure everyone's clear. And then you're going to choose one person to share their story and the others will ask questions and listen for strengths in that story. After sharing, you're going to select all the cards that reflect the strengths in that story. So once you've heard the story, everybody else is going to look at their cards and they're going to pick out the strengths that they've heard in that story. And then you can take a screenshot as a reminder and you can move on to the next person. So let me just show you how that's actually going to work in Deckhive. So you can see on the left-hand side, you've got a little pack of strengths cards. And if you just click on that, it opens the strengths cards up. And you can flip the strengths cards with that arrow in the top corner. So you can see I've got all of the images now and I can flip them back to the words. So what's going to happen when you go into your group, you're first of all, I'd suggest you all do this at the same time. You look through the images so you can see you've got a slider down the side so you can go through the images and pick an image that for you represents a time when you're at your best. And then maybe I choose this one of the baby with the ducks, and I'm just then going to move it onto the desktop. Now, remember, I would be in the relevant tab for whichever group I was in. So if I was in breakout group 3, then I would click on the circle 3 at the bottom. It will turn orange, and then I know I'm in the right space. But for now, I'm going back to the example. So all 3 of you, or 4 of you, if that's how many of there are in the group, you all move your image onto the tabletop. And then you decide who's going to go first. And say, I'm going to go first and I'm going to tell you my story of when I'm at my best. I tell you my story and everyone else listens to my story. You're all listening to hear the strengths. And then what I want you to do is flip over the cards and I want you to pick 2 or 3 cards that reflect the strengths that you've just heard. Okay, so maybe you think my story sounded like I was being curious and decisive and analytical. For argument's sake, again, you can slide up and there are 48 cards, so there's lots of words to choose from. And so then I should have my picture with a selection of words around it. And then just take a couple of minutes to share why you chose those words. So I can see Conrad at the moment, so maybe Conrad's chosen these 3 words for me. And then Conrad's going to say, well, what I heard in your story was you were analytical when you did this. And I felt like you were being decisive when you said that. And then we move on to the next person. Does that make some sort of sense? Makes a lot more sense when you're actually doing it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. I'm going to give you 20 minutes. So I make it, for me, it's 7:25 in the evening. So we'll have until 1:45 to talk about this, to work through it in your groups. I'm going to stay in the main group, in the main room. So any problems, then just come back to me or put any concerns in the chat. Okay. Well, but enjoy. Just take me a minute to get you into groups. Okay. Okay, they should be open for you now. You should be able to get into your groups. Oh, now have the 2 of you not been assigned? Trying to see your names. Why not?
I can't see anything.
No, I can see that for some reason. Let me see. Oh, it says for some reason you can't access breakout groups. Ah, but I tell you what, because there are the two of you here, my suggestion is the two of you work together in this main room. So have you both managed to get into Deckhive?
Yes, I'll have to do it again because I'm out.
Okay.
So not really familiar with Teams.
Yeah.
So here we
Stop
go.
showing, 'cause that's not helping.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm in. Yep, I'm here.
And Elizabeth, are you able to hear us as well? Excellent. And are you in Deckhive?
Yes, on a separate screen.
Fab.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, why don't you work on tabletop 5? So if you click on 5
Sure.
at the bottom, then we know you're away from everybody else.
Okay. So
I'm
I'm
hearing somebody else talk.
I'm in 5.
Excellent. So you should be able to see, and I can join in with you to work through it as well. So on the left-hand side, if you flip your card so you can see the images, so we all need to choose an image that reminds you of a time when you're at your best. So the connection can be as loose or literal as you like. It's really just so you can tell the story.
I placed my card.
Excellent.
Oh, okay.
Fab.
So I see the other card. Great.
Yeah. Okay. So which one of you wants to go first? Who wants to tell their story first of when you're at your best?
I could go first. I could go. Is that okay? I go.
Yeah.
Mine was adventurous. So I was at my best when I was abroad, either volunteering or traveling in Africa, doing things that I love, which was working with chimpanzees and doing rescue work, and that, time in my life where I am at my best.
Wow. So tell us a bit more about it then. So what were you doing?
I was working actually in Guinea, West Africa, working at a chimpanzee sanctuary. We rescued orphaned chimpanzees, rehabilitate them to eventually release them back in the wild. And I also volunteered in Canada. We have one sanctuary for chimpanzees in the whole country. I volunteered there. I loved it. And I wrote a book about it. And yeah.
Oh, wow. So what was your role in the care and the release? What did you do?
I was a surrogate mother
Okay.
to the orphans, the babies. And for the what we call the adolescents, take them out in bushwalks to get them used to and to teach them hunting and climbing behaviors.
Wow. So how do you do that as a human? Because you know, what are you mimicking? What how do you do it?
Oh boy. Well, it is a long process. It takes about 10 years to rehabilitate a chimpanzee, at least 10 years. So they're in a group, so they also learn from each other. They learn from the older ones, and we teach them things, how to crack open a nut using tools and so forth.
Wow.
And the babies, well, we give them baby formula and we act like a mother. We bottle feed them baby formula, human baby formula.
Wow. That's amazing. Are you still working in that field?
No, I'm not. But I plan to go back to do other rescue work in sanctuaries in Africa. Yeah.
Wow. I could spend the rest of the session talking about that, but that's So what we now need to do, Elizabeth, is just flip over the card so they're the word side, and then pick out sort of 2, 3 strengths that we think we saw in that story. So pulling them over from.
Okay.
the other side. So yes, you can do it for yourself as well. And
Oh,
then
okay. I
so
could do it for myself as well.
do it for
Okay.
yourself, and then because it's interesting to compare.
Right.
No.
Oh, okay.
We're supposed to pick 3, right?
You picked your 3. Okay.
Okay. I'm putting a whole bunch up here, but okay.
Well, that's good. So where's your, I'm just going to flip your adventurous so we can see your picture in the middle. So which do you want to explain, say which words you chose, Elizabeth, and why?
Supportive, because I could tell throughout your description that you were, outside of yourself, supporting something outside of yourself with the organization that you were helping with. And I could tell in how you were describing it that you are very calm and passionate about what you were doing. That you weren't just doing it just to do it or be able to say, oh, I'm doing a good deed, but you really seem to enjoy it, especially because you want to go back into doing the same thing or something similar.
And you would be correct.
Yeah. Yeah, so was that all the ones that you just chose, Elizabeth? Was that,
Yes.
sorry, yeah.
Yeah, supportive, passionate, and calm.
Yeah, that was it. Sorry, I was so caught up in what you were saying, I was missing which word you chose. And I chose patient. I think you know, talking about it taking 10 years, that's a huge commitment. And so I also chose generous, because in terms of you giving your time and committing to a project like that, it's just huge. And warm, which I think I was interpreting a bit like Elizabeth with supportive, just that sense of warmth and being able to do a job like that. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, I find generous surprising.
Really?
Yeah, because for me, it's something that I didn't have a choice. I feel like I was put here to do this. I had no choice. It was a driving force. So, but I guess it would seem on the outside as generous.
Yeah, that's really interesting though, isn't it? And that's interesting that having that clarity of purpose and being able to use your strengths, it obviously felt like I was saying about authenticity is what you're meant to be doing. Yeah. So which ones did you choose for yourself? So you chose playful.
Yeah, playful. Well, we certainly did a lot of playing with the chimpanzees. Cooperative, you have to be cooperative with the other volunteers and the staff and the local staff. Organized, you have to know, there's certain rules that you have to respect. There's quarantine rules that people coming in have to respect. You have to know when feeding time is, because it's important to keep a schedule for the chimpanzees. You have to be passionate, because who wants to live in the bush with no electricity or running water? So you have to be really passionate about the issue. Yeah, and I think engaging, I mean, you have to physically engage with the chimpanzees. It's not just about being present.
Yeah, that must be a big part of it, building those relationships.
Yeah.
But then the one a strength I almost chose for you was resilience, because presumably there comes a time when there has to be that separation as well, and that must be really difficult. I mean, wonderful but difficult, kind of. It must be
Well, yeah, I don't find I was resilient, because I did have a hard time, and I did have to shorten my stay for many reasons. One of which is getting malaria. So yeah, I guess there's a little bit of resilience. I don't see it though.
No, well, I think that might be benchmarks of what resilience looks like.
Maybe.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
if you click on the little camera at the bottom, that will give you a screenshot of that, and then you can keep that
Oh, nice.
that feedback.
Okay.
And then Elizabeth, you can share your story.
Yes. Playful. Not necessarily that picture, but just when I engage, because I primarily do adolescents and young adults. So when I engage with them, it's been for me, even back when I interned, a process, because when I interned, specific time, I remember I was interning with the Los Angeles Police Department at the time, and it's a lot of juvenile delinquents or people on probation. So learning in working with them, I helped bring out the playfulness in them and them to see a different side to themselves. And it also brought out the playfulness in me. And I really don't come from the juvenile delinquent background, me personally, in my life, but it gave me, in working with them, inspiration for and a heart for working with at-risk youth and the struggles that they go through that I've never had to go through, and wanting to give them hope that, as the solution focus provides, hope for, a brighter future, or to see that they can make a change in their life from what they're currently going through. Or some of them, feel like they can't do anything else other than join a gang, which is what their family members have done. But, them giving, coming with me and learning that, they can have hope. And even the program I was a part of even gave them a chance to, get, if they were angry or upset or needed to get out their frustrations, they could join the boxing program that they had for the adolescents and learn to express themselves in a positive light versus, joining a gang or going and acting out and getting in trouble at school or causing problems, which is what they're, unfortunately, a lot of them were taught at home to do. And so I, as their counselor, come alongside them and help them find hope in their life and find a reason to wake up every day, see their own personal strengths, and that they can have a brighter future and a better life for themselves than they thought possible.
Yeah, amazing. And how do you do that? How does Elizabeth do that in a way that might be different to other people? What is it you bring to it, I suppose, in terms of your approach?
Just in how I meet them where they're at and learning to find their strength in what they're sharing with me about their life and what they're going through and what brings them into the program, and just helping them to see that they are capable of far greater things than they think they are. Because a lot of them come in with the problem focused mindset or thinking that there's only one way, which is what their family teaches them. There's only one way, gangs or going and, getting into prostitution or what have you, or getting in fights at school or anything, you name it. But then helping them to see, no, you are capable of far greater things than you think you're capable of. And helping them in what they share with me to recognize that and to believe in themselves.
Wow. Tough but really rewarding work, I'm sure.
Yes.
How long do you work with someone on average? How much does it vary?
It varies. Some of them it's 10 sessions, some of them it's a year, 2 years, just depends, because a lot of them come from low income backgrounds as well. So some of them, they stop coming to the program because transportation issues, or, some of them just stop altogether because unfortunately they got caught up in the system.
Yeah. Yeah. You're both doing some very inspiring work.
Yeah.
So should we do, if we do the same thing, then we'll all
Mhm.
pick about 3 strengths that we've heard you share, Elizabeth. There are, again, some obvious ones, I think. We've chosen some overlapping ones, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to go first? Which ones did you choose for Elizabeth?
Well, the first one I chose was guiding. I mean, when you're working with youth, they need support and guiding on the best future for them. I'm sure I heard also that there's a lot of practical things to consider on where they're at and to remain hopeful on their future. And I heard also that there's a lot of factors to take into consideration. So being detailed would be important and positive for them.
Yeah, definitely. I heard all of those. And I chose hopeful as well. I think that was
Yeah.
very strong. You used that word several times. And also practical. I mean, you were talking early on about,
Yeah.
yes, meeting them where they're at and coming up with obviously solution focused approach and playing to the strengths. And you gave examples of the different ways of working. And the other one for me was open-minded. I think, you're contrasting it to your experience of the world in terms of your own upbringing and so on, and the recognition of, the variety of challenges people might be facing, and that there are different options available to them. And I think that meeting people where they're at is a sign of open-mindedness, very much so.
And along with open-mindedness is remaining open-minded with different individuals you're working with who might be the same age but have completely different events happening in their life, which or they may want to go different paths. So to remain open-minded.
Yeah, definitely. Which words do you choose for yourself, Elizabeth?
Hopeful was definitely one, because constantly having to try to remain hopeful for them. Attentive to their situation, their needs, which I guess goes hand in hand with open-minded, because like you said, not everybody's life situation is the same. Just because the backgrounds may be similar doesn't mean their experiences are cookie cutter, are the same.
Right.
And just to have, a warmth with your presentation with these kids, because some of them, honestly, they just want someone who will listen to them, who will speak to them. I'm thinking of one in particular I'll never forget, who stopped seeing me because they were moving from a 1-bedroom apartment to a 2-bedroom apartment. So they'll be further away from where the center was. But there were 10 of them because they're, Hispanic family, and that's just what they could afford. And they all lived together and just make it work. And so I was excited for the client because they were getting a bigger space, but yet it was still going to be tight for them. So, just always having that warm presence to accept whatever they bring to the table.
Yeah, amazing. I'm just going to shut the rooms and everyone will start coming back in a minute, but amazing stories.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Now, both of you, I should just double check. This main room will be within the video if I just send the video as it is. Are you happy for those stories to be shared, or would you rather
Sure.
I cut
Oh,
that out?
fine. That's
Are you sure?
I'm fine. Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much. That's appreciated.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody. Give everyone a moment to get back. How did you find that? If you want to unmute or put in the chat, I'm just really interested in your reflections on that as an activity.
Hello.
Hello.
At first, once I got through the kinks and knowing how to do the things and
Yeah.
things that can all to how to leading us. But I can imagine, because I remember not only my brain was visualizing the story and bringing back that memory, which I know that happens in solution focused when we ask the resource questions. And then all of us, I could see like I forget when the lady said, we all sit up and we were very animated, and you most like feel proud, right? Or maybe proud's not the right word, but you feel, you're feeling good. You have this good energy. So I really liked it because I didn't realize that was going to happen, because I thought, what is this? And then once I did it, I was like, whoa, this is really cool. I can't wait to use it in a group setting, possibly.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Thank you, Tammy. Yeah, it feels like a very logical, rational thing to do, doesn't it? And then you do it like, oh, it's quite emotional. It's quite, that's the sort of primary driver of it. It's brilliant in a group. And I do it 2 different ways in a group, depending on what you're trying to do. But it can be really great to help a group to recognize when they're at their best. So I put all the cards out on the table, picture side up, and I say, everybody pick a picture that reminds you of this team or group at its best. Everyone picks up their picture, and then I get everyone to share. And even at that level, you get that strengthening of bond in the room. But the other really lovely thing to do in a group is to get all of the cards, or if everyone's got a pack of cards, brilliant. And we say, we'll start with Tammy. Everyone go around and pick one word that you associate with Tammy at her best, that you really appreciate in her. And then you go around and everyone gives you that 1 sentence feedback. Everyone holds up the cards, and then you move on to Elizabeth, and you move on to Cameron, and so on. You can imagine, again, for strengthening connections in a room, it's a really lovely thing to do. Yeah. Thank you, Tammy. That's really helpful. Anyone else's reflections? How did you find it? Yeah, yes, I didn't really get it at first, but what a great tool. Yeah, thank you. It's yes, one of those things that feels really simple. And sort of, what's the point? Where are we going with it? And obviously I've done it really quickly with you, and in not ideal circumstances when we're all online working like this. But you can have quite a big impact quite quickly. And hopefully you start to get that sense of what I was talking about earlier, in terms of you're telling your own story. So you're connecting with your own strengths. And this version of activity, the way it actually works is you're telling a story about when you think you're at your best, and then everyone else is giving you feedback. So you're getting validation of what that story you've just told and what you think your strengths are. And that can be hugely powerful and really useful for self-esteem, useful for and self-confidence and so on, but also for self-awareness, to understand where we're having the biggest impact. Is definitely a sort of real positive. And we think there's a lot of value in this narrative approach to identifying strengths, which I think is very consistent with a solution focused approach more broadly. Yeah, any other reflections? Tammy's just asked where you can get the cards. I just put a link in the but yes.
I think that it reminds me a lot about or a lot of another solution focused exercise that I use a lot, which is called resource gossip. I don't know if you know about it.
No. How does that
work?
No,
and it's kind of the same idea. You don't have any cards or any physical things. You just sit in a small group circle. One person, if you don't know each other in the group, one person starts telling the other ones a short story about something they've achieved that they're proud of, and also something that took an effort to achieve, and what it took to get there. And then that person turns their back, and the other people gossip positively about all the resources and positive characteristics that they see in this person. And it's free to guess. You don't have to have proof of the strengths you see. You just give them lots of love, and then the person turns their back, or turns back into the group, and says something about how it felt to them, if they recognize themselves in the strengths they heard, like this. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
kind
love
of the
that.
same
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, no, it is the same idea, and it is a really lovely exercise. And I can't remember what I've called it previously, but yes, done the same thing. And again, hugely powerful. And one of the things that I think is important to note about that exercise, I think it makes an important point, that receiving strengths-based feedback isn't necessarily easy. And what happens in that activity is, you share your story and then you turn your back, and it allows people to have their emotional reaction. And allows everybody else to share without having to face that person. And I think it recognizes the power of the emotions. And yeah, it's definitely not pink and fluffy. People can often think that solution-focused, strengths-based approaches are pink and fluffy, and they're really not. They can be quite hard-hitting for people and quite challenging to receive that feedback. And I think it's important that we remember that. Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for those reflections. I'm conscious we've just got a couple of minutes left, so I'm just going to double check what else I was going to tell you about. But I think you've covered most of the feedback that I wanted to, or the points I wanted to make. But you can see that this kind of approach can be used in lots of different ways for lots of different purposes. I mean, we've just done this exercise of starting to identify strengths. And as I said, that's great for self-confidence, self-esteem, and so on. But going back to the research I shared earlier, one of the massive benefits is moving beyond strengths identification to strengths usage. And where I would often go with using the cards or that narrative approach, however you choose to do it, we use our cards, but you can use other pictures, or you can use stories or objects, or you can do it however which way you like, is to then get people to think a little bit more about, okay, so these are the strengths that I've identified for myself, or that others have identified for me. Where can I use them more? So I've just been told the stories about where I am using them, where I'm having impact with them. Where are my opportunities to do more of that? And having heard those stories within their real context, using their language, then it should make it easier for them to identify where they can be using their strengths more. It's really a really playful kind of way of working with strengths and engaging. I think that's important. I think we need to recognize that one of the huge benefits of strengths-based approaches is the positive emotions they generate. And so doing that in a playful kind of way, I think just feeds that. And that's a really positive thing. It's helping people develop their own narrative so they own their own story of their strengths. And that's really, really important to me, that there isn't that disconnect between I need an expert to interpret me as who I am at my best. I'm the expert in me. I might need an expert to help me to facilitate that and to identify and work it out for myself. But I am the expert in me, and I'm the person that's driving my development with support, not unsupported. But it's me that has the agency around this, and that's why we like to do it in this kind of way. And there's no training needed for people to start to do this. And we quite often, if people are really struggling with the concept, then we'll get them to start to notice strengths in other people first. Because when they start noticing them in other people and they start getting into that language of shifting their focus towards what's working, quite often then it's easier for them to bring that round back to themselves. Ultimately, it works. We found it to be a really effective way to help people to have more and better conversations and thinkings around their strengths and when they're at their best. And the ripple effect of that going out into teams and then organisations is brilliant, and it can really help organisations to have a bit of a shift in the way they're looking at things. Now we're pretty much out of time. We are out of time, but I was going to do an exercise with talking about how questions shape our experience. I will leave that for another day. But that you can see is how we're broadening out from talking about strengths to basically it's the questions we ask. It's the way we're approaching the world. You all know that from a solution-focused approach, but we also use that kind of idea within our coaching and teamwork as well, using a different set of cards. Again, having questions on cards. I find that's a playful and easy way to engage people in the concept that we're talking about, which is about shifting towards what's working. But we'd love to stay in touch and to have further conversations. So please do shout if you would like to talk about anything anymore that we've been talking about, but feel free to scan the barcode and stay in touch with us. You can try the online cards at deckhive.com, and it also gives you the facility to make your own if you want to do that. Yeah, I've shown where to see the physical cards. But thank you ever so much for joining the session and for all of your contributions. And hopefully I'll see you in other sessions over the rest of the 24 hours. But enjoy the rest of the conference and speak to you soon.